Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler, and I feel it's going to be one heck of a week. We start off with just in no order of importance, really, but yesterday for me, I am recording this on Monday the 22nd. Whole bunch of Western states recognize the Palestine as its own independent state. While Trump is en route to a memorial of his friend and ally. Something that he warned them against doing because it would make his job of negotiating a peace settlement, or, attempting to get a peace settlement, which probably won't happen, mostly due to the Israelis at this point, or Benjamin Netanyahu specifically. You do that. You sabotage his peace efforts when he's on his way to a memorial. It uh, real bright there. If you wanted Trump to crack down on you, because that's what Trump's history is. You screw with him, he won't. Well, deal with you. But that has nothing to do with today's topic. But like as I said, this week is going to be interesting because I believe it's Wednesday. There's a meeting between Trump and some Arab states about what's going on with Netanyahu and Hamas and the rest of the Middle East at this point. Because is there a Middle Eastern country that Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't launched a attack against directly or indirectly? You know. So that'll be interesting. Whole bunch of economic data this week, and on top of that, all right, we have more indications that the West is very much going to a civil war with no escape. There is no off road at this point. They could not even let the American right grieve the loss of Charlie Kirk without making it worse. They did not. They did not stop their rhetoric for a second, and they did not even give them a day of mourning without rhetoric, as you can see. The disgusting comments that were made by multiple people on the extreme left, or in the radical left at this point, continuing to push political cover for the radicals who will do damage. And that's the thing, okay? That's the point where we are at. There is political cover that has been going on for at least a decade, if not longer. You can say definitely longer, for the left, for the I don't want to say defective, but like the way their brains work is outside of the norm, and they do believe violence is acceptable when given political cover. That is the key there. They are, sociopaths, psychopaths, that type of what is it? It's like is it type 2B personality, something like that. Um Extremely dangerous people, the way their brains are wired. Yeah, like these people are the dangerous ones that in prior to Reagan in the 80s shutting down the mental asylums were designed to take and hold away from society. Now, the problem is they didn't just catch those people, and there's a whole lot of problems with the insane asylums, especially in America. But you had a area for them. You really don't anymore, and they are given have been attracted to the left and have been given, again, political cover to commit smaller acts of violence, and are now being given political cover to do more violent things and worse things. And again, they did not back down one iota on their rhetoric for like any part. And it goes for, the Jimmy Kimmel thing. So Jimmy Kimmel obviously crossed the line with what he said. All right. Any broadcaster with a state license to broadcast openly, like ABC has, before the FCC chair said, "Hey, I need to take a look at this because I believe what he did violated the law," and there is good reason to believe it. I am not an expert by any means on American law, and specifically the law about broadcast licenses, but it seems there's like a law from the 80s that they did violate. But anyways, ABC, had they want to keep Jimmy Kimmel on, could have very easily initiated a lawsuit, used the PR to their benefit, and created a media shitstorm and kept Jimmy Kimmel. Like, you don't think ABC and Disney knows a few friendly federal judges that they can run to? Shit, Disney's been spending how many years now getting copyright law rewritten through law and through legal judgments? You don't think they got a couple judges they know that can be like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge? Give us the decision we need here? They wanted Kimmel gone because if you look at his ratings, and with the collapse of USAID money going around, and just money flying around in the economy generally, they can't keep Kimmel. Like, his ratings were lower than some of the mid-range prominent right-wing conservative influencers. That's how low his ratings were. So, but they used it as cover to be like, "Oh man, Big Daddy government. We have to obey Big Daddy government. There's nothing we can do. Oh no, Kimmel's gone. Too bad. So sad." And then they push the rhetoric. Immediately again, the right is a bunch of fascists, Nazis, you name it. To the point now, after what happened, or what was going on during, again, Charlie Kirk's memorial service, with the usual suspects at this point being absolutely disgusting human beings. Nothing new, but they are absolutely disgusting human beings. You are starting to see the right not turn the cheek like they have. I even saw prominent MAGA and MAGA-esque, MAGA-adjacent people start saying, basically quoting Solzhenitsyn and Rules for Radicals by implying, we will not hold them to our standards, we will hold them to their standards. Now, when you have both sides doing that, and you have the mainstream media continuing to play political cover with prominent politicians and other prominent personalities to give political cover for those who wish to do violent things, where is the off-ramp? Because just look at the reaction to Kimmel, okay? That's why I brought it up. When someone goes beyond the pale, all right, of what we deem morally acceptable in society, as in, again, giving political cover to those to do political violence or creating that atmosphere, all right? And we want them held accountable because they did play a part, all right? I do not believe that Charlie Kirk dies if the media did not spend the at least last 10 years radicalizing and giving political cover to certain groups to do things. Now, I also think there's a whole lot more involved in what's going on with that I don't think we'll definitively ever know what specifically happened. And I will not give my theories out at this time. Maybe in a year or two when it is not so close. But the theories that are mostly being pushed, I do not accept. I will say that. But anyways, the media has been for years using, you could say, coded language, but it's been out there in the open to radicalize people that have already been radicalized in university. All right, like that's no longer up for question. This is definitive fact. And if you don't believe me, that's fine, whatever. Go look at how the left talks about the right and how the right talks about the left. More often than not, you will see the left using language that is increasingly violent and nudging their followers into doing action, where the right will say, for the most part, now obviously it's not 100%, they'll say, yeah, well, these people just disagree with us and we need to have conversation with them. For the most part, you do have fools acting the fool on both sides, obviously. But it is not the same. Those on the right are like, that talk violently are like almost immediately shunned by the majority of the right, because that is socially and morally unacceptable to those on the right. And as seen by the amount of people who got angry at the celebrations from radical leftists about what happened to Charlie Kirk, you can say the normies also find it morally reprehensible and disgusting and beyond the pale. But where's the off-ramp? Because if you look at how things have gone, if you go after, say, the sources of radicalization, say cut funding or go after teachers who are actually radicalizing people in the public school system and then the post-secondary school system, do you think the left will take that? If you go after the media radicalizers for promoting violence, which they know they are doing, especially in the context of violent shootings, you can say mass shootings specifically, the way they cover that, they have known for over a decade at this point that research shows the way they cover it causes a contagion effect. They do not care. They have been informed by multiple people who have done good research and studied it, by the FBI themselves and other agencies, saying the way you are doing this causes a contagion effect. Blood is on your hands. Okay? And yet they're never held to account. If you start holding them to account, what do you think will happen for the left? You give them any amount of pushback and they freak out, lose it, and become violent thugs that at this point we have to assume they are, because that's how they react. How do you do that with the minimal risk of escalation? And this isn't me, citing that there is no, and I'm genuinely asking the freaking question. How do you de-escalate this so that it's not yet again the right taking it on the cheek? Because that can no longer happen either. Now, I'm not saying, this looks anything like, say, the American Civil War, the French Civil Wars, also known as the French Revolution, or any other civil war. I don't know what it will look like. I don't know when it will happen, or if we're already definitively in it. But there is, again, my thesis has been for a while, if America falls, the rest of the West is going to as well. when it comes to civil conflict, because lots of reasons. But if you look at it, America is the cultural heart of the West. If it happens there, the contagion will spread. It will not be isolated. As you could see with Black Lives Matter, that is a specifically American historical thing that happened. Like the reason why the Black Lives Matter people were pushing it is because of, historical things that happened in America that did not happen in, say, Canada, and yet we had those. Happened in a different context in, say, Britain and other countries, sure, but they were all quoting the same thing. It is a global spanning civil war where you have extreme radicals on one side that have been given political cover to commit violence with zero to little repercussions. Think about what happened with the two lawyers in New York who firebombed, I believe, a cop car. It may have been a federal car or something like that during the summer of peace. They got at best a slap on the wrist. They should be in jail for the rest of their lives. And I think, again, this is the problem that everybody has, is how do you de-escalate this when you're at the point where you have a completely intact propaganda machine that, while does not have the same power it once did in, say, the 60s with Walter Cronkite, the man who famously on air said that reality had a liberal bias. Yeah, sure, that's why liberals have to control speech to such an absurd degree so that conservatism or just right-leaning ideas die out. Sure, buddy. You're absolutely right with your thesis there. But even still, with weakening power, they're able to create a media environment in which they can push their propaganda and narrative with near impunity. Now, yes, you do have people on the right who push back and expose the truth, and you have people in the middle that do that too, who are sick of this shit. Absolutely. But the machine still remains. And it is still quite relatively powerful. So the question, again, remains, how do you avoid? Now, do I think it's inevitable? No. I think it could be stopped. I just, at this point, don't see enough people putting forth ways in which it will work. Now, I was listening to Robert Barnes on Rebel Capitalist Interviews, is I think the channel that George has it on. There was a talk between George Gammon, Robert Barnes, about, the right looking like they're engaging in cancel culture. It's not cancel culture from the right. Absolutely not. Cancel culture was people being canceled from society, not just, hey, you said some disgusting shit that the entirety of society that is, a polite society, let's put it that way. The entirety of polite society says, this is unacceptable. You get shunned for this, all right? And it's a shunning. It's not you're banned from society like the left wants for all of the right. Look at how many prominent figures on the right, were banned from everything. Like they were banned from payment processors they don't use. They were banned from their bank that they were at for, years, if not a decade plus. think about that versus what the right is saying is, for the most part, okay, that there's obviously people that are going too far. It always happens. I'm not going to say there's any good guys or bad guys. There's just people. But what the right is saying is, for the most part, again, for the most part, there are people in positions of certain power, okay, that are saying these morally reprehensible things to, say, children in class. By the way, there's that teacher who showed the video of what happened to Charlie Kirk to children and then said it was good and he deserved it. Absolutely get rid of that. The doctor that was fired for celebrating it. The nurse that was fired for calling that horse shit out, and then eventually rehired because of political pressure. I think she should move on. But like, that is very much radically different from what the left was. The left wanted to cancel you from society, subjugate you, and end you. The right wants you to be held accountable. At this point, radically different approaches. So, but the point of what Barnes was saying, of how you de-escalate this, is you have to hold certain people that are in prominent public fixtures or in prominent positions of power to account. That you have to show them that this is very much unacceptable, and get rid of the era of political cover for these acts. And once you get rid of the political cover, the violence tones down and eventually stops. And I think that's a great way forward. The problem with that is, again, you are fighting a massive organization of creating narratives that the right does not have an answer to at this point. To the same degree. Because you can find, doesn't matter what right-wing group you go into, all right? Across the world, you will find people in that right-wing group who will parrot propaganda from the left about a topic. Doesn't really matter. Like, you'll find someone who will do it. Happens to everybody, because the propaganda is so pervasive. You have to, at a certain point, make an assumption or work on that everything you have been taught by certain people is false, and you have to research it yourself, which is an extremely long process. So, again, this is very much my worry, that there is no escape, even though you can clearly see there are many ways out of this that are peaceful. I just don't think it's likely to happen. And that's the problem. Because if more and more people also believe that, hey, this is inevitable, and again, I'm not saying it's inevitable, I just think it's highly likely. But if you get more people saying, hey, this is inevitable, eventually the side that's been taking it takes the gloves off and returns. And it's not, and then it just, there's just escalation until one side wins. And hopefully, again, we don't make it to that point, but, the more time goes on and the more events happen, it just, in my opinion, it just seems more and more likely. Well, that was I don't know, heavy video to do. But it's been my opinion that we're, for damn near 20 years now, that this is the most likely scenario that plays out. Anyways, there are a whole bunch of things happening this week. There's economic data. There's again that meeting with Trump and or Trump officials. I don't remember if it's actually Trump himself meeting with Arab leaders to see if they can come to some kind of agreement about what's going on in the Middle East. There is increasing insanity from NATO towards Russia, and it seems like the Russian people are losing their freaking patience, which that's never a good sign. Look at the historical context of that. And there's I think I want to talk about a very, I think, slim possibility with Canadian bond sales not exactly going through the same likely sovereign debt crisis that the EU will likely go through a couple years after, the shit hits the fan properly. Once we get past because we're still early on shit hitting the fans. Like the U.S. labor market is still like it's deteriorating, and it's very clear it's deteriorating. But it hasn't hit the rolling waves of mass layoffs yet. You've been going in that direction for a while, but it hasn't hit yet. So the markets haven't reacted yet. Once the markets react, okay, and bailout programs and stimulus programs become the thing that is talked about, like openly, and it's not using coded language anymore. You have to put like a 2 to 4 year clock on specifically EU bonds for a sovereign debt crises happening. And there's a potentiality that Canada doesn't exactly experience the same degree of problems. Part of the reason is our bond market isn't that large, but a lot of it has to do with the way banks work. So we'll see on that. And there's probably 100 other things that need to be talked about this week. So that's what'll probably go on the rest of the week. I'll do what I normally do. Play it by ear. Find a topic I like and do this. Until then, till tomorrow. Have a good day.